Everybody hates Daniel, apparently, and he's a mean-spirited skinflint. And this might be an opportunity to suggest to other people that he's not.
Why can't we look at it as just a good gesture from the manager to say, look, those staff who can't, I'll pay for the families. It's like, well done, Ruben.
I never for one second thought that he was on there really berating Nuno Espirito Santos.
No.
I thought Gary Neville's statement was absurd.
He's now gone on the pitch because he's fuming that this player was put back on the pitch because of his welfare. Or because
and that's not it.
That's not right.
Yeah. Neville's assertion that they should all go and renegotiate their contracts and should be ashamed of it is just ridiculous. I think it's a pious, sanctimonious, narrative-creating statement from Nottingham Forest. You think Neville stepped across the line? Tell him. Don't drag everybody else into the narrative and then make yourselves holier than thou. And that's the end of the discussion, isn't it?
Now we know Sunderland sink Coventry with a winner in the 122nd minute to reach the Championship playoff final, and they will meet Sheffield United, of course, in that final at Wembley. Third and fourth in the league. Is it a finely poised playoff final, do you think, Danny, between these two?
Well, I mean, you'd say Sheffield United favourites got a bit more experience in their side, but on any given day, a big final, you never know. I thought Sunderland were lucky, to be honest. I watched both the games. Coventry were a better team by quite a way.
And Frank said so, didn't he? We'll get to that.
Well, it wasn't one of those silly comments from a manager who's not seeing what everyone else is seeing. They dominated the game for long, long periods. I mean, Sunderland let them have possession at time, don't get me wrong, but the chances they had and the final third entries and the crosses, and they had a header, didn't they, I think, minute before they conceded. Or was it last minute and normal time? I can't remember, but they had so many good chances.
Yeah, I mean...
But one goal in 200 minutes of football,
not enough.
It's not going to get you where you need to go.
No.
That's right.
I mean, they were the better side in the first game, and they gifted Sunderland their goal.
Yeah.
And Sunderland were anxious, as their manager said at the beginning. I mean, the stadium atmosphere was phenomenal. There's only a few incarnations of sport and football that can produce that sort of reaction. I mean, you watch the goal go in for, obviously, the last-minute header from Ballard.
Incredible.
And the atmosphere was, brilliant. Unbelievable. I was looking towards a penalty shootout and reminding myself of 20 years previously where we scored a goal in the last minute at Sunderland to take in the playoff semi-finals, to take it to penalties, or to injury time.
I think...
And watching, thinking, because their players in our playoffs bottled it in front of their crowd.
Yeah.
And missed penalties.
Yeah.
Well, they certainly didn't. I mean, just because they didn't play, they were resilient, dogged, defended well in numbers. That's discipline. I'm not completely criticising them because if you don't play well and you still dig out a result with that resilience, it's fair play.
If you look at if Sheffield United turn up, I listen, everyone I tipped Coventry, so of course they're out now. But if Sheffield United turn up, then I would expect them to deal with Sunderland, because I haven't been impressed with Sunderland in the two playoffs. You certainly can't have been impressed with Sunderland in the last 6 games of the seasons where they've lost. Yeah. And Coventry can consider themselves a tad unlucky, but if you score 1 goal over 2 legs, you're going to be struggling, no matter how much you dominate the ball.
Well, the man in charge of Sunderland these days is Regis Lebris, and he spoke post-match about the significance for his football club in getting to Wembley.
They never give up, and they are always connected, so it's really a special character within the team. And even when we are not really good with the ball, we are still hard to beat. And so it's tough, and we can wait until something will change the dynamic, and it was the case. So because of this togetherness, this character, we can stay in the game. Yeah, it will be another tough game. I think Coventry were really good tonight, and during the first leg as well. And Sheffield, it will be a tough game, another one. But I think we will be prepared for this fixture, and we'll fight until the end.
I remember the last time I saw Sunderland fans, Simon, in London. They were heading to Wembley that day. I got in the tube with them. The tube was rammed. To a man, to a woman, they were brilliant. They're great supporters. They love their football club, and they love a day out, especially when Wembley's involved. After 8 years away, is it not about time Sunderland moved out of the shadows and back into the big time?
Well, look, I mean, I had it programmed into my head that for some reason or other, the first game was 1-0, so I'm wrong on the score lines. But ultimately, Sunderland are a big club. I think also Coventry. I mean, Coventry have been away. When it was bought by Sisu in 2003, I think, it was because they thought there was an easy, quick turn as a hedge fund of getting the club back into the Premier League and cashing in and out. That was 22 years ago.
Yeah.
So there's no God-given right for anyone to be back in the league.
Yeah.
Sunderland are a big club. Some of their ownership I didn't get, and we played them a few times, and I didn't really much like their ownership. And
you've said that before.
The most amusing call I ever had was when we beat them in that playoff semi-final. I got calls from Freddie Shepherd saying, "You can't go out in Newcastle and spend any money because your money's no good." And by the way, whilst you're there and having won this playoff, can you put Bob Murray on the phone, who's the Sunderland chairman? I said, no, I don't think I'm going to put the Sunderland chairman on the phone to the Newcastle chairman, so you can laugh at them. But they are like all fans in parts of the world where the football club is such a huge part of the community.
Yes.
Significant.
Yeah.
But no, I think after 8 years, they don't have a God-given right to be there.
Yeah.
I think Coventry have just as much right to be there in terms of size and value of their football clubs. But when you saw that, because when I saw the atmosphere in the stadium yesterday, and I remarked upon it earlier on in the week, when we played them all those years ago, I thought we were going to go into a cauldron. I thought we were going to go into, and it wasn't. And it wasn't fully sold either.
Yeah.
But what I saw yesterday was a completely different feel about this football club. And maybe it's because it's had so much adversity over the last 7-8 years of Ellis Short and all the different challenges that they've had with the ownership model that had Charlie Mevin and people like that involved. And now they've got this young fella with his father's money that's put him into a situation where they've gone back through the leagues.
Yeah.
So fair play to them.
I'm going to put it out here, Danny, and I know there'll be a response from Sunderland fans, and that's why I'm doing it. But I'm doing it for a reason. This club, Sunderland, is it going to be forever in the North East's poor relation category alongside Saudi-owned Newcastle? They can never aspire to that. So they're going to be the poor relation for a long, long time. Sunderland fans, tell me different if you want. But is that not the case?
Well, they had a spell when I was playing where they were up there in the Premier League.
When Bruce was
but the dynamic's different now.
Peter Reid, Brucey, I mean, it has changed. So they're more than capable with their fan base of being competitive. It's like anything. You need a bit of funding. You need time. It has to be right. I think most people look at Newcastle as a more glamorous, bigger club in some respects. Yeah, I think that would be fair. But I don't think I don't think Sunderland have got a ceiling if they had the right finance behind them. They've got huge fan base.
But it's a different time, Daniel. Last time Sunderland were in the Premier League, Mike Ashley was the owner of Newcastle.
True.
Look at it now.
Well, that's
Newcastle flying under the Saudis. Alexander Isak, Bruno Guimaraes. Great stories everywhere you look. Sunderland, poor relation.
Well, I mean, that choice of words is a bit, what's the word, derogatory, I suppose. I don't know about poor relation. I just think they're a club in a different situation.
I don't mean to be derogatory. I think that's a fact of the matter.
I mean, even when they built the Stadium of Light and moved from Roker Park and upticked and upscaled, which is a brilliant stadium, by the way, it still always felt, and maybe because I'm a Southerner and maybe because I'm not versed enough in that part of the world, it does feel that Newcastle are the bigger club. It does feel that Newcastle have the bigger scale. And so as a result of that, if we want to call it the poor relation, what I think it should be categorised as a region that has an embarrassment of riches. You know, you have two big clubs with passionate fan bases. Alongside that, in Teesside, you have Middlesbrough with a big passionate fan base as well. So all of these clubs in that part of the world are part of the rich tapestry that makes the English football pyramid so special, brilliant and so special.
Yes.
So rather than sort of create the outrage of saying they're a poor relation, I think it's just good to say that what a wonderful area to have two football clubs.
Got Hartlepool as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
This Nottingham Forest story involves a player, it involves officials, it involves pundits, it involves a controversial owner, the Greek shipping tycoon Evangelos Marinakis. Let's get to it. Forest's Taiwo Awonye placed in an induced coma in intensive care as he recovers from a serious abdominal bout of surgery, as we understand it. He underwent a complex procedure, it's been described, and a coma can be used to help manage that recovery. So what was this about? It was a game between Forest and Leicester which resulted in a 2-2 draw at the weekend. The incident, which also saw Leicester midfielder Facundo Buonanotte collide with the post, happened after Anthony Elanga was allowed to advance in on goal despite being a mile offside. Play continued after the assistant referee delayed putting up the flag, with both players colliding with the post at speed. Hence the injury to Awonye, and then the flag went up. Danny, before we get on to some of the reaction to that, what was your take on this? How can football not change the rules after the Awonye fallout here? Is it time to stop protecting officials over players?
I think this is a really difficult one because the philosophy around not putting the flag up to let the phase of play finish makes sense. The problem is when it's really obvious, and who determines that, by the way, you know, is it 2 yards, 3 yards, you know, whatever everyone's a bit different.
Being correct is what determines it.
Well, the philosophy around letting the play go to get the outcome, and then if it is offside, rather than the other way, seems logical and right to me. But it has gone a bit too far because some of the offsides we're seeing where the flag, it's just even the players are looking across, not hardly jogging back and then this is the first example we've had of a really bad injury due to this. So we are going to get questions over it. I think this is just unlucky in that respect. So I don't see a way.
You don't see a rule change coming in as a result of the one-way moment.
I think there might be a gentle word with the officials to when it's
a poor decision from the linesman.
It is.
I mean, the actual language is delaying the flag and whistle for an offence is only permissible in a very clear attacking situation. Permissible, which means the judgment of the linesman is if you're offside, he's well within his rights to flag.
Yeah, this one. He
chose not to flag.
It was a sheer thing.
Or she. It's not a structural. It's not an issue about the fact they keep the flags down.
Hang on. IFAB's protocol.
Now the language here, I'm reading.
When an immediate goal-scoring opportunity is likely to occur, the assistant referee will keep their flag down.
Yeah. And that's what she did.
If they think there's an offside until the passage of play is completed, once a goal is scored or the chance is gone, so the chance is gone, the assistant will raise the flag to indicate the initial offence.
It's frustrating.
But that's the protocol.
It's frustrating, Simon.
But this is the language that PGML have put out, which is delaying the flag whistle for an offence is only permissible in a very clear attacking situation.
Which it was.
So it's permissible to do, which means it's a choice. So if you want to flag, you can flag. And if you want to keep your flag down, it's permissible for you to do so. So it's a judgment call. If you know that fella's offside, and you can see he's offside, it's your gift, it's within your gift to either keep your flag down or put it up. It's permissible to keep your flag down. So you make a judgment call as an official. So if you know he's offside, you should flag.
Yeah, so you're talking about competency, aren't we?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, we're not talking
about a rule change.
The rule change.
We're talking about the competency of the official.
The rule change would take things backwards, I think, because what you then get is the flag going up really early, like we used to, you know, in terms of, right, I see it or I don't see it, and then some of them are going to be onside. So what's the lesser of two evils? The way we've got it's okay.
Do you agree with that? I'm kind of going with it. I mean, Danny, you played the game at the highest level. And I'm getting what you're saying.
But with respect, in situations where it's clear...
It was clear.
Then it's down to the competency of the official. It doesn't need the protocol to be able to be... We have loosely interpreted the law. Maybe we haven't. Maybe someone has given them a strict guideline, which is irrespective of the permissibility, which is their own language.
Right.
It's their own language.
Irrespective, leave it down.
Leave it down. If they've been told that...
Yeah, but then you'll get some raising the flag and some not.
Yeah, you do.
But be right.
But
if you're right,
but Simon, you need consistency here.
If someone is too,
because the fans are looking like, what we're going to get here then?
But if it's a marginal call, then ultimately, yeah, that's why offside is so complicated. That's why they haven't mastered it right now, and that's why they need VAR to help it and become automated. But if you're 2 or 3 yards offside and the linesman knows, he knows, then he has no business keeping his flag down. Because he knows that the permissibility of his decision-making process enables him to get out jail card, I keep it down, but I know he's offside, so I'm going with it, I'm going to back myself. Well, and if he's wrong, then you've got a problem.
And he's not wrong in saying that.
No, I know.
They've got to make the call as they see it.
And so, the grey area with it, or the contentious issue with this, is what you said. Some linesmen would have, linespeople, would have put the flag up there, because it was clear.
Yeah.
The only thing you can say, for her, is that in that situation, maybe she didn't think it was clear and she wasn't sure.
But that's not good enough then.
Okay. But
that's not good enough. I'll defend the referees till the cows come home about making mistakes. But if it's clear and it's obvious and you can clearly see it and there's no debate and a good official that's up with the game, knowing what they're looking at, then it's a no-brainer. Yeah, make the right decision. Stop being cowards.
That's right, Danny, isn't it?
It was clear.
Well, then that's the end of the discussion, isn't it?
No, but in terms of going back to the original point, the law, which you've just read out, I don't think that should be changed.
I don't think they've been cowards. They've got to make a call, though, as they see it.
But the original, I mean, again, the language...
Judge your own judgment.
VAR is there.
Rely on it.
VAR is there to aid and abet. not to rely on. It's there to aid and abet, and it doesn't take away from the original decision on the field. So that means if you're competent at what you do, you make that decision, and you're right. And she would have been right. And so we wouldn't have had this discussion.
But the same VAR has changed the way the officials do their job.
If it were a toenail and you can't see, then she would have been right to keep her flag down.
Yeah, but let's just agreed. But the reality is this situation, because I've been in games where people have collided with the post and they're not offside. Things can happen on the football pitch, unfortunately.
Yeah, but that could have. What we're saying is
could have been prevented. Yeah, but so could most things if you look at them from a really pedantic point of view. We wish him well. We hope he's better soon, because that was a nasty one.
Yeah,
and then obviously that caused a knock on, which we're going to talk about next. But no rule change for me with it.
No rule change.
Just better competency.
Agreed.
But the Marinakis situation. So it's Nottingham Forest, 2 statements in 48 hours. And what we saw on the field of play, now, those out there who don't know, but I'm sure more than everybody's seen it. After the game that finished 2-2, a lot of us in the media jumped to the wrong conclusion that Marinakis was saying to Nuno, well, that was a missed opportunity, for God's sake. It turns out he's suggesting what happened there with the
substitution.
A 1 year moment. Yeah. With the substitution, why did it take so long? Why was he off the field of play for so long and we were down to 10? Explain that to me. But Marinakis was out there, putting that point.
What he was doing, Jim,
right on the final whistle to Nuno Espirito Santo.
What he was doing, he was remonstrating with him.
Yeah.
With not particularly too vociferous.
Right.
But what he was doing was saying, why did you put the sub on?
Yeah.
When he couldn't carry on? Because he used his last sub. Yeah, thinking he was going to be okay based on the medical thumbs up.
I get that.
That's what he was fuming.
But it boiled down to the optics suggest that Marinakis was giving a bit of a finger wagging.
He was just a bit
to
annoyed.
Nuno, and Gary Neville reacted more immediately to that on Saturday night on social media. Scandalous that from the Forest owner. Nuno should go and negotiate his exit tonight with him. The Forest fans, players, and manager do not deserve that. So then Forest hit back with not 1 but 2 statements. And Marinakis, no doubt, would play a major part in this statement. The first to Evangelist Marinakis, this isn't just a football club, it's family. And he instills that message in all of us. That is why he was so personally and emotionally invested in the situation that unfolded at the City Ground. His reaction was one of deep care, responsibility, and emotional investment in one of our own. Then...
That was the second statement.
Then they get into it, though, about pundits and how they react. Incidentally, what do you make of that?
What do I think of it?
From Forest reacting...
I think it's rewriting the narrative. I was in defence of this man in terms of the fact he has the right to do as he wants.
Yep.
This is a guy that runs his football club in a certain way. He's the guy that was alleged to spat at officials. He's the guy that brought Clattenburg in to suggest that the way that they were being refereed was ultimately against the best interests of his football club. And he courts controversy. He's now marched onto a football field, which is his right to do. Right, because he owns the football club. I never for 1 second thought that he was on there really berating Nuno Espirito Santo.
No.
I thought Gary Neville's statement was absurd. Right? But I'm sorry, with the best will in the world, and whilst you can never know what someone's intention, he wasn't marching on that field because he knew that player was particularly injured and it was going to be a massive concern long term. He was marching on that field because he was exasperated at the outcome for Nottingham Forest.
You don't know that.
That would be my best guess. And they're trying to rewrite the narrative. And the elegance of what he said in his first narrative was he slaughtered his medical staff. You can do all this in private. You can do all this with your staff. Not one single person that supports Marinakis berating the people that he worked for, allegedly or realistically, would like it done to them in front of all their colleagues in front of an office. That's not how you lead people.
No, but let's put that in perspective before we go on to the second statement, because I do agree with you. If you listen to Nuno after, who dealt with it brilliantly.
He did.
Articulately, calmly. Yeah. Marinakis' first statement was reasonable to a degree, and it's mountain out of a molehill, as far as I was concerned. He owns the club. He's done lots of good for it. The club's in a great place.
Indeed.
The statement
because of him.
The statement talked about how proud he was. The first time they're now in Europe. Irrelevant what happens in the last 2 games. How he praised Nuno. He had a little dig at the medical staff. Fair enough. He's the owner. So what? Let's not let that deviate from how brilliant Forest season's been. Good statement. The next bit, which is what Simon's talking about and alluding to, is the wrapping it in a different way. What's the word? Like, I don't know, framing of it in a different way.
Rewriting the narrative, controlling the narrative.
To make emotionally, it's one of our own.
I mean,
he cares, he's passionate.
Come on, we know.
But now we'll get to this bit, and no doubt Forest are reacting to what Neville said. And Gary Neville, just to remind you, said, scandalous act from the Forest owner. Nuno should go and negotiate his exit tonight with him. Then Forest go that bit further. In light of this, we urge former coaches and players and other public figures in the game to resist the urge to rush to judgment and fake news online, especially when they don't have all the full facts and context. Baseless, ill-informed outrage for the purposes of personal social media traction serves no one, least of all the injured player. We call on these influential voices to show the same respect for player welfare that they often demand from others. Let concern come before commentary. Now that is a swipe at what Neville said, Danny. So soon after what he witnessed with Marinakis addressing
The
Nuno.
only thing that I think Neville did there, he's jumped in quite quickly thinking that he's on the pitch having a pop at him for whatever and jumped in and emotions got the better of him. I think it's...
Yeah, but it's a ridiculous statement.
No, I agree with you. But what? Because
it's a ridiculous statement.
Let me just finish.
And they should be saying it about who they mean it about, because I think it's a pious, sanctimonious, narrative-creating statement for Nottingham Forest. It's a football club that I greatly admire. I think this man's contribution to this football club is remarkable. I think he gave you an interview after they got promoted, told you that they were going to go after European trophies, and he's backed it with his cash.
What's so offensive about the statement?
I think that they're
having a swipe at what Gary Neville said online.
Well, then say Gary Neville. Don't drag every other pundit into it and everyone else that's observing on the fact.
They might have other pundits went a similar direction.
This man did not march on that field, in my view, because he was concerned about the well-being of an internal intestine issue with this player. He was frustrated, like everyone else in that stadium, that they hadn't gotten the game won against a lesser side, and specifically Leicester, who are major rivals of theirs. They were losing their Champions League berth as a result of it, and they were frustrated.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think he berated the manager, and I don't think it's a major crime, and I think Neville's assertion that they should all go and renegotiate their contracts and they should be ashamed of it is just ridiculous.
But you don't know that.
But the broad strokes...
The Forest statement says, in moments like this, Marinakis demonstrates his leadership, not just through words, but through action and presence.
That's not leadership. That's not leadership. It's a version of it, because your team are doing... If he did that when their team were bottom of the league about to get relegated, their fans would not be saying the same thing.
What it's framed at is, I think this is the thing. What it's framed at is that he's now gone on the pitch. This is the narrative. He's now gone on the pitch because he's fuming that this player was put back on the pitch because of his welfare. And
that's not it.
That's not right. Yeah. That's not true.
But how do you know?
Because
come on, they say in the statement, his deep frustration, Marinakis' deep frustration at seeing our player lying on the ground in severe pain, something no one with genuine care would ignore, triggered him to go on the pitch. It was instinctive, human, and a reflection of just how much this team and the people mean to him.
What triggered him was the fact that a player went back on the pitch who couldn't perform.
Who are you two to deny that that's not why he went on?
And I think that's great if you subscribe to that view. And that's the narrative they want you to subscribe to. The reality is all of that could have been done in the dressing room, out of the public glare, away from the idea that people should be commenting on the orthodoxy of an owner stepping on the pitch. This guy does push the envelope. He does do things.
Because he says he would do the same again if such an unfortunate event were ever to recur.
But the point's not he went on the pitch here.
No, it's not.
That's not the point. The point is how they're trying to frame it now. We know why he went on. Nuno more or less said it after.
No, but there was a point that Neville's making, which is actually should never go on the pitch, and there's a resistance to the fact that an owner shouldn't be there, and we've seen the Greek owners go in there and boot officials and behave poorly on the continent. So are we seeing this imported into our game? We've seen him being accused of spitting at officials. We've seen him bring in Clattenburg and cause uproar with the idea that Nottingham Forest are being discriminated against by the refereeing fraternity.
But also, in view of what we heard from Gary,
I don't believe it.
Scandalous from that Forest owner. Nuno should go and negotiate his exit tonight with him. But Forest have hit back on that. At Nottingham Forest, we believe the mental and physical well-being of our players and coaching staff must always take precedence over media narratives, inflammatory judgments, and certainly over self-promotion. They're saying that Gary maybe he's putting that out because he knows the clickbait will be substantial. Danny, if fans, players and owners can make emotional judgments and statements, should pundits be afforded that same excuse? Do they need to be held to a higher standard?
I think everyone has to be held to a certain level standard, yeah. I mean, I've been guilty a couple of times of getting involved emotionally in something and saying something spur of the moment, looking back and thinking, that was a bit naive. I jumped in a bit there because I'm probably my own worst critic in that, and trying to do better.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think you have to be held accountable. You can't just say what you want and expect to get away with it. I think Gary's jumped in and said something. Well, I assume with his intelligence he would look back and probably regret a bit now. If you watch it back, it's hardly a ding dong with the manager.
He said it. He's written it on Twitter.
Pardon?
He's written it on Twitter.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's not something. It's not in a spur at the moment. He's had time to consider it.
And if you consider that, Danny,
he was in the
didn't
middle of
fancy it,
commentary and
delete
then
it.
typing it at the same time.
Yeah,
that's a considered response.
Yeah.
So
Well,
he's held accountable. It says considered as his observation.
well, he is held accountable, isn't he? Because we're talking about it.
Sure. And that's why Nottingham Forest should name him if they feel so aggrieved.
Yeah.
And I can tell you something as well, with due respect to his argument about how the concern would have been if Nottingham Forest had scored a goal in the last minute of that game, Marinakis wouldn't have been on that pitch, wouldn't have been anywhere near it.
Well, he might have been, but with a big smiley face.
Yeah, and so this idea that we've got to all buy into the idea that the reasons why he was there, which is the point that I object to, which is the reasons why he was there. I don't object to the fact he was there. I don't object to the fact that he might have been having some cross words. I think it's ill-advised and I think it's bad leadership. You do that in private. Right? But the idea we're now being forced to swallow is don't you dare criticise the principles of what Marinakis did because his only concern was on a human level.
Well,
and I don't buy it.
His reaction was
and I'm
one
not
of
going to be lectured by Forrest about it.
His reaction was one of deep care, responsibility, and emotional investment in one of our own. What's up with that?
But if they'd have scored...
You're saying that wasn't why he was on the pitch?
No, I don't believe it.
He was on the pitch for
I don't believe it.
He was on the pitch.
But you're then rushing to judgment without all the facts, and you're accusing Gary Neville of exactly doing the same thing.
But I'm not advocating for a whole raft of consequences as a result of it. I'm pushing back against the orthodoxy or the narratives now being created by a sanctimonious, holier-than-thou statement from Nottingham Forest.
Who are you to do that? How do you know that that's not absolutely and precisely why Marinakis
because I'm entitled to my opinion.
Well, because if you listen to Nuno and the wording and what he said after, you will become acutely aware that the reason he was annoyed was that Forest ended up with 10 players, well, 11 on the pitch, but one who couldn't move because of a bad decision to bring a sub on in your last possible substitution when he couldn't carry on. That's why he was on the pitch. I think
common sense prevails. The fact of the matter is, I do agree with them, and I agreed with them on Monday, that what Neville has said, and he's got form for it. He was the one that used the language like when the Man United fans broke into Old Trafford and started intimidating everybody and threatening Souness and Carragher that they should mobilise. So people should be accountable for what they say. And he is accountable, and it was a considered observation, and he's probably delighted because he's got 12 million people viewing it. And Nottingham Forest are right to say clickbait stuff. Well, direct it at Neville. The fact of the matter is, don't rewrite the narrative. I guarantee you that if they'd have won that game, he wouldn't have been on the field at that moment. He might have been in the dressing room afterwards and said, how's the player? Because that's a human thing to do. But to turn it into the fact that the reasons why he stormed onto the field was primarily to ascertain the well-being of that player is a crock.
It was an instinctive, human, and a reflection of just how much this team and its people mean to him.
Fabulous. It's a crock. And they made what... And by
he
the way,
would do the same again if such an unfortunate event were ever to reoccur.
We're not saying he doesn't care about his players.
No one said that. And by the way, if you stuck 500 million quid in something, I bet you do care about it. Because it's a reflection of you. You want it to be successful. If you've stood in front of the camera and said you're going to win things, you do care about it. And when you do own something, whether it was a football club you grew up supporting, because I'm not, I've heard the narrative that he grew up in the 70s and was an admirer of Nottingham Forest. Fantastic. We all were, right? But if you own something, you have a pride about it. And of course you're invested. Of course you care about the people that work for you. But this is a step too far. You think Neville stepped across the line? Tell him. Don't drag everybody else into the narrative and then make yourselves holier than thou.
Ruben Amorim of Manchester United has paid for 30 of his Manchester United backroom staff to take their families to the Europa League final in Bilbao in Spain, after being told by the club that his coaches, physios and support team would have to pay for their own tickets. Manchester United are not providing their staff with complimentary tickets to the final, in contrast to Spurs, who are, stop mumbling, in contrast to Spurs, who are offering one to every full-time member of their 700-strong workforce. So Tottenham are saying, we've made it. Here, we're sharing these out, and well done for the work you've been doing behind the scenes. We're off to a final. Amorim, on the other hand, is saying, I'm paying for 30 of you to be there. I'm dipping into my own pocket. But why on earth should he have to do that? Is there something a bit tragic and small fry, Simon, about the manager having to dip into his own pocket, let me finish, to pay for the club staff Bilbao tickets?
What is Manchester United's policy on this ad infinitum? They've been to lots of cup finals, lots of different tournaments. So what is their policy in the past?
Well, firstly, the devil...
And why would the coaches and physios not already be there as a matter of course?
They will be.
So he won't be buying tickets for them, will he?
No, I think that story is actually he must be buying tickets for their family.
Their families.
Yeah,
Right.
not them.
That's it.
Okay.
Because
For
they
their
need
family.
to be there.
Right.
The physios and the coaches will
Yes.
be inside the stadium.
Exactly. So,
Yes,
so why
which
do
is
the
both noble and praiseworthy.
but their families don't
But
need
why
to be
should
there.
be doing it?
But what is Manchester United's policy? If we're going to create this narrative, which is basically it's another example of the management of Man United and the ridiculous mean-spiritedness of it. If they have run this policy previously and that they don't tend to give 700 free tickets away, if that's what Tottenham Hotspur are doing,
Every full-time member of their 700-strong workforce.
Well, do you want me to tell you
They'll
what
be there.
go ahead, Danny, speak to it.
I've been in a couple of European finals, and the policy was always the same.
Which is what?
You get given an allocation of tickets as a player individually, so you'll have your
How many did you get?
complimentary was either 2 or 4, and then generally you get around a 20-25 mark to buy, depending. And obviously, if another player doesn't use allocation, I could say, Simon, are you using all yours? And you go, no. I go, can I buy 5 of yours?
Right.
And then you distribute some to family and friends. So even as players, you would buy the extra. You're not given the tickets. You're given the 4 complimentaries, which is maybe 2, I think 4, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But then you get an allocation to buy. The staff would, and I can't remember exactly, but they would get something similar. So you might get 2 complimentaries as a staff, close staff
Yeah.
within the first team, and maybe the possibility of buying a couple.
The staff plus their families.
Well,
the staff plus one, maybe.
The problem is with it, Jim, and this is where it gets a bit grey area. Staff, huge staff now, in terms of, if you're talking about, what did you say, 700?
700 at Spurs.
So where does that staff go? Canteen staff, kit, mat, where it goes all across
Right,
the board.
right.
So giving them individual tickets might have happened in the day, but they wouldn't be getting free tickets for the family. Not in my experience.
Right. Well,
Not-
our understanding is Spurs are offering 1 to every full-time member
Yeah, but not to their families.
of their 700-strong staff.
for them.
But in contrast to that,
So it's not a big story to me.
Amarim, backroom staff plus families, Amarim's like, into his pocket, I'll look after this. Now,
So what?
should the club be doing that? Should he be doing that?
Well, why do
should
we,
should Manchester
why do we
United
know about
not?
this? Why do we know about this? Why do we know that Amarin's gone into his pockets? Who's told us this, and what is the purpose of it being told?
Well, the purpose is Manchester United. So it's
I know what the purpose of it is. I know what the nature of the observation
So
is.
it's a
I just find it a
rhetorical
bit
question.
wearing that this is a story to keep bashing Man United with.
That's what I'm saying. So we know where it's come from. It's because it's
The only person that could have told anybody that he's bought 30 tickets is Amarin. So I don't know why he'd want to tell everybody. If you want to go buy someone 30 tickets, it's like, I hate people who go give money to charity and make a 4-act play out of doing it. If you want to give money to charity, go give it.
well, to be
Right?
fair to Amarim, he might have bought them, not told anyone, but somebody who he's given them to, or somebody who in HR where he's had to, or ticket office, not HR, ticket office, wherever he's had to pick up the phone and go, I'll pay for that.
It's like-
They've leaked
It's
it.
like I didn't take the entirety of the backroom staff, the hundreds of people that worked at Crystal Palace at the playoff final.
Yeah, exactly. How many did you
There
take?
was no inherent I can't remember. But
Did
I
they
did.
buy
No,
one?
no, you can remember. How many did
No,
you?
I can't remember.
Yes, you can.
No, if I could, I would. I'll tell you, I've got no problem with it. But what I can tell you is I didn't cater for the entire staff, which is what you're suggesting Tottenham are doing. And I don't think any other football club would either.
No.
So this is obviously an assault on Manchester United because it creates an outcome. But the fact of the matter is if it's not a policy, the fact that Tottenham are doing it, fair play.
Yeah.
Everybody hates Daniel, apparently, and he's a mean-spirited skinflint. And this might be an opportunity to suggest to other people that he's not. Right? That he values the people that work for him and he values the football club, full stop. No, Luke, he can't.
Producer looks through the glass here, jumping about. But how can we know Tottenham are paying for their staff?
Well, because it just takes 1 or 2 staff members to say, I got given a ticket.
Exactly.
And so did everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It is-
but in order to
So we
judge,
know about United, but this is continuing the narrative. According to you,
It is.
the United are a bunch of skinflints under St Jim
It is.
Ratcliffe, and this is just the furthering of the austerity measures that we've seen applied recently.
Why can't we look at it as just a good gesture from the manager to say, look, those staff who can't, I'll pay for the families. It's like, well done, Ruben.
would in your judgment and experience of playing at various football clubs, is it incumbent upon the football club to give every member of its staff
No.
a free ticket? Is it a standard practice
No.
to do so for a major event? If it is not, then it's a non-story. Well done, Tottenham Hotspur, for being so generous.
It's
and
certainly not.
no particular discredit for Man United for doing what everyone else does.
I think the norm would be to
mean-
give the staff the availability to purchase a ticket if they wanted to go.
I think
the
that's right.
700
I think
strong
that's what I did.
workforce, the 700 strong workforce of Tottenham, that's great and that's terrific. That's a thumbs up to them.
Mm-hmm.
The people that Amarim are paying for have nothing to do with the fact that Manchester United's players have stunk the place out in the Premier League this season. So it's a nice reward from them, from the man who they brought in to try and turn things around for them after Ten Hag. It is a good vibe story, but why should it happen? Why does now? Let's say this is the case, and we know it is the case.
It's £1,500.
But why shouldn't Sir Jim? What's his worth? I mean, it's something ridiculous, several billion. If you had that kind of dough, Simon, would you not give it? I'll look after this.
Where's it stop? Where's it stop?
It doesn't matter, Danny.
Well, if you don't,
when are they going to be in the next Europa League final?
Let's say Sir Jim had done that,
right?
And 700 staff at Man United were getting a free ticket. Would the story then be the 700 staff have all got a ticket paid for, but none of their families have?
Where does it stop? Let me just get this right. So the fellas just bunged £1 billion into Man United, then stuck another 200 or 300 million quid on top, right? And that's not enough for us. And you and your little socialist ways, we've got to turn him into making sure that every time there's a good cause involving Manchester United, it's Jim Ratcliffe, who isn't in control of the football club, as I've said repeatedly, and as was confirmed by the guy that's just written a book about Manchester United and the ownership model yesterday, Chris Blackhurst. It's his responsibility to be a registered charity and to go out and bankroll anybody that wants to do anything, because the judgment call is Man United are now going through a period of austerity, rather than actually, why are you paying Ferguson £2 million a year? Why are you doing these sort of things that are now being pulled apart and put together again? Because ultimately people are going, now come on now, we've got to run this football club a little bit better than it's been run economically previously.
And yet you, by your own admission, the philanthropist that you are, said a short time ago that when you were at Palace, a number, and you couldn't quite remember the figure exactly, but a number of staff, you funded them getting to a final.
No, we probably got an allocation of tickets and I gave them to them.
You gave them to them?
We would have got an allocation of tickets that are free.
Have you ever got into your own pocket?
Yeah, for 10 years.
No, I don't mean that. But on a one-off basis like this, on a similar vein to what Ruben Amorim is reportedly doing. Here, I'm going to look after them.
It would have been a standard policy.
Have you ever done that?
Yeah,
your own money, the Simon Jordan handbag, was it ever opened? The purse taken out?
Open every single week, otherwise they wouldn't have had a job for 10 years, would they? Because the club was losing a fortune. So let's pack that silly argument in. The fact is that Ruben Amorim, you're not, because it's a silly low resolution conversation. But the fact it's reductive. But go to Amorim and go, what's he done? He spent the kid's on what, £5, £6, £7 million a year. He spent £1,500 on tickets. That is it. That's the story. He gave £1,500 of tickets to 30 members of staff, family, and friends. Big deal.
So there you go. It's a good news story. It's not a divisive
yes, one. It is now.
You've just turned it into a story of division.
No.
A good news story.
No, it's a good.
I see what you've done there. What a good journalist you are.
It's a good news story because I haven't allowed you and that little gobbling out there to turn it into something that's divisive about Man United and what they shouldn't done.
It's already out there as divisive.
Well, it is. I mean, I'm reading the back of one of the papers.
We could curdle the Thames. That one.
One of the papers this morning on its back page. Manchester United stars are unhappy at only being offered 2 tickets each for the Europa League final against Tottenham in Bilbao. Even though United could hit a £100 million jackpot if they win a game a week today and qualify automatically for next season's Champions League. I'm telling you
right now, there's no chance that the players are only getting 2 tickets each. That is absolute bull.
Okay. Can you get texting in the next break or so?
Well, okay, so I'm
some of your Manchester United contacts.
I'm a Man U player.
Based
and my
on your
wife
experience.
and 2 kids.
How did you get for when Fulham got to the final?
My wife and 3 kids want to go, and they can't.
Yeah.
Is that what United are telling the players, yeah? Come on.
Well, this is what is doing the rounds. United stars are unhappy at being offered only 2 tickets apiece for the Europa League final.
They might have 2 free tickets, and they'll be able to buy 20 odd.
Yeah.
Like I told you before. There's no way. You might get 2 complimentaries, yeah.
Yeah.
But 2 complimentaries doesn't mean you can't get 20 tickets. You can buy the others.
Yeah. Well,
God forbid you'd have to buy them when you're out your 200 grand a week.
I think the upshot of this is well done, Ruben Amorim, for paying for 30 of his backroom staff to get to the... And well done to Simon's best pal, Daniel Levy. Morning, Jim. Danny in shorts this morning. I'm not surprised. I bumped into him on holiday in Oman. Danny was there. The calves on those legs, the biggest calves I've ever seen. Very, very impressive. Even more so when he wore his swimming shorts around the pool area. I mean, I'm not sure what to make of that.
Jim, that was many moons ago when I was in much better condition than I am now. Let's put it that way.
I bet you were budgie smugglers.
I didn't.
Well, I looked under the desk, as I said, when I was looking for my pen a moment
went there
ago.
once, a place called the Cheddar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no,
well,
man.
I was impressed this morning, so goodness knows what you were like when you were in Oman.
What are other hotels?
Yes. Thank you. What is next for Coventry? From 17th to 5th with Coventry, but 2 playoff heartbreaks on Frank Lampard's CV. Are we any the wiser now to Frank's managerial level? Certainly, as is agreed largely this morning, Coventry, with a better team last night, deserved to go through, but they didn't.
It's tough because we deserved to win over 2 games, absolutely, in football terms. Football's not like that. But the performance of them, we dominated the first game, and everyone can say, oh yeah, you know, what the result was, but we dominated the game. So we had to come in and get something, and we did, and we controlled it, and we took the sting out of it, and we played, and we created, and we got our goal, and we created, and we were the team. The crowd went quiet, and then obviously the goal at the end is crucial, but I'm just proud because you can't control every little bit of football.
I think he's right, Danny, isn't he? I mean, everything went to plan until Ballard got the goal. And that was the difference in Sunderland go through. But everything was going to plan. His plan was working. But where's his level?
Well, I think he's still a young coach learning. I mean, he's done a tremendous job this season. To go in when they were, 16th, 17th, I think, and to get them in the playoffs was
17th to 5th.
Far and above what I think most people thought was going to happen. So he deserves credit for that, the level of football they've played.
So he's 47 years of age nearly and managed 250 games.
Yeah, 250, yeah.
So
and
does that still qualify him as a young coach then?
Well, maybe not in age, but I think in any coaching job you're always learning. I think the fact he only had one spell at the top level in the first, well, he went in briefly the second time at Chelsea, but the first time he was in at Chelsea, I thought he did a good job to finish in the top 4 and to get to a cup final. It's not bad. Yeah, he had a good squad, but it's still not bad.
So where are you going with it?
I think he's proven at this level. I don't think there's any debate that Frank Lampard could manage in the Championship and be quite successful at it. One playoff semi-final, one playoff final in 2 attempts. Neither one of them from hugely advantageous position. Obviously, he traded on the currency of being able to pull in some Chelsea youth team players into the Derby setup when Morris was pushing Derby to get forward and go forward as a football club before the challenges that he had. In this situation, he picked up a slightly less preferential circumstance because Coventry weren't in good nick. They've got an owner in there that on prima facie looks ambitious, but has ultimately the club has got to cup semi-finals and to playoffs but not achieved in either of them, so there's a bridesmaid mentality about it, albeit the owner must think that football's relatively easy because he keeps on having a level of success each season that gives him opportunity and aspiration. I don't think there's any doubt that Frank can manage at this level. I think he's a decent manager at this level. I don't know whether he can manage in the Premier League. Yes, there is a good idea that the first season at Chelsea, where they didn't have a lot of choice, they weren't able to go into the transfer market. They did spend some money on Pulisic, but that was legacy payments. And then the second season, when he was given money, the wheels came off, and they came off relatively quickly. You know, the confrontations with Rudiger and people like that created a problem inside the dressing room. In walks Tuchel and makes a mockery of the Lampard challenges by going on and win the Champions League 4 or 5 months later. And then the Everton situation, which I do believe to this day that if Frank had stayed there, Everton would have got relegated. I do think the replacing of Frank and the putting in of Dyche saved Everton from getting relegated. But I think at this level, I think he's I think he was very gracious in his interview, very pragmatic, very elegant in the fact that the first thing he wanted to do, because he must have been crestfallen, was to say congratulations to Sunderland. You're in a stadium where everybody is going absolutely hysterical,
right? And
you've got to watch that and be part of it. You're 300 miles or 200 miles or 150 miles away from home, sat there in the worst place that you want to be, which is losing a playoff semi-final with virtually the last kick of a game. I think that he goes again next year. It depends what his owner does. There are suggestions that a proportion of the funding of Coventry last year was the cashing in of a sell-on of the centre forward that everyone wants to buy this season. If the owner's ambitious...
Who's that? Gyökeres?
Yeah. If the owner's ambitious, then they'll go again and give Frank some more resources. 20-odd million euros was spent last year on players, which is not unrespectable inside the Championship.
Yeah.
I think the club is together again. The initial shockwaves about the reaction of Mark Robins being fired has long since diminished. Frank is part of it now. The team's playing well.
Yeah.
I think they can go again, but I think it's going to be difficult for him.
You're in the camp of blessing in disguise mentality, Danny?
Well, in some respect, I mean, no one would ever think that within the club because you're devastated, aren't you? But I think for Coventry to go again and be a real contender next season, whereas maybe it was one, you've gone from 17th to playoffs,
Yeah.
and then possibly jump into the Premier League. I'm not sure I think it would have been too early. I think you've got much more chance of staying up if you go from. I mean, Simon's had experience of this, but if you're a very well-established club in the Championship and winning all season and being much more confident, and look, if you look at
what he did, didn't he? I mean, if he goes up to went up to the Premier League, you've got to take the opportunities where they come. There is no blessing in disguise. You lost a playoff semi-final. Your opportunity to get to the Premier League is there. You take it whilst it's there. It's manifest destiny. You grab what's yours and you take it whilst you can.
Yes.
And if he went up and they made a better fist of it, because the currency's now been set, the narrative has now been written. It's written, which is the promoted sides are crap. They're all going to get 66 points aggregated over the course of the season, and everyone's going to go down with that relegation on their CV. If Frank Lampard either pushed the envelope and got them close to staying up or kept them to stay up, his currency would have gone.
Yeah, that's true.
If he went into the Premier League,
the flip side
didn't do the nonsense of, I don't care if you did Match of the Devil on Sunday or not, of Russell Martins and people of that nature that stuck to a philosophy, this irrespective of the reality of what was in front of their bleeding eyes, and went down with a whimper, then no, he wouldn't be. I think he's a pragmatist, Lampard. I think he's a sensible lad.
He is sensible. The reason I'm saying that, the flip side is, you go up, maybe with an really inferior squad, because that's just where you're at. And 6-7 games in, he's lost everyone and been battered, and all of a sudden you're out of a job after doing so wonderfully well the season before. Whereas if you would say that Sheffield United, for example, in the playoffs, are more prepared than Coventry would have been to go up to the Premier League with the squad they've got.
One thing I want to mention, and I by no means want to dampen down the euphoria around Sunderland this morning, but as we saw last night, and it was a hell of an end to the game, of course, and Sunderland fans were ecstatic, but there were some flashpoints as some Sunderland fans ran onto the pitch. Flashpoints with Coventry staff, including a shirtless Sunderland fan and Frank Lampard. Lampard slapping a phone out of the fan's hand, who tried to take a selfie with him on the pitch. Now, what a moment to choose to try and do that. And Lampard's just lost it. But this again, Simon, and I'm not making a mountain out of a molehill here, it never goes away. Why would they want to celebrate in the pitch when the vast majority stayed where they were? Why can they not just follow that example and lap it up from where you viewed the game? Why do you need to go on the damn pitch?
You'll have to ask them. The fact is that Sunderland were very quick to react to it. And they were very quick to get stewards out on the field. They were very quick to do everything they possibly could. And it wasn't a big pitch invasion. It wasn't a Hillsborough a couple of years ago when all the Sheffield Wednesday fans piled onto the pitch after winning their playoff semi-final.
Right.
So it was a more muted response. But there was always going to be people that believe that things don't apply to them. People that think they can do as they want and that they're entitled to do it.
Why?
Because that's society. Why do people go and burgle people's houses? Why do people do things that they shouldn't do in life? Because they're not.
Why did you get scammed at an ATM? Yeah,
absolutely. We legislate for these things. And if we understood why they would do it, then we'd be like them, wouldn't we? The fact that we don't understand that they do it means that we can't relate to what they do. And the challenge of it is the poor club that's trying to make sure that order is maintained. Yeah. They wanted to parody Frank Lampard. They wanted to catch him at a moment.
Put it out on social media. Frank.
Absolutely. And Frank, get out of it. I don't blame him.
Right.
Don't blame him.
Right.
Some people you just can't tame or educate or influence.
Just throw them out. Get rid of them. End of conversation. Then they'll get to act in haste and repent at leisure.
Yeah. Well, like that.